Hi, good morning. It's me again. And I promise you, my session is not going to be as entertaining as Steve's, but the learning will be no less. Right, so at this point, because we have a very esteemed panel of speakers, and at this point in time, I would like to introduce them on stage. Would all of you want to just come up at this point in time? Gasper, Michelle, and Stephen, right? Hi. Right, a very quick introduction of each one of them. Gasper Tan, most of you would know him already because he's been with the sector for about 7 years. He's the Chief Executive Officer of SOS, Samaritans of Singapore. And SOS is a leading organization dedicated to suicide prevention and crisis support. Prior to joining SOS, Gasper has about 30 years of experience in the private sector. And many of those are in the startups as well, across different industries. So Gasper. Michelle Cheo is the Chief Executive Officer of Mihua International Incorporated. It is a leading agri-food company headquartered in Singapore. They produce and distribute edible oils, dairy products, rice, detergents, and other consumer brands. I hope it's right because I also checked it with AI. And Michelle has been instrumental in steering the company's growth and strategic direction for more than 20 years. She's also on the board of Helping Hand, a halfway house, and that's where we're going to also be extracting some of her experience for our learnings. Last but not least, Stephen Keys. He is the Chief Talent Officer and Chair of the IFS Foundation. IFS stands for Industrial and Financial Systems. It's a software organization. It's a global enterprise software company headquartered in Sweden. He chairs the corporate social responsibility initiatives through the IFS Foundation, which focuses on breaking the poverty cycle in rural Sri Lanka by investing in education and public health. Right, so we do have a lot of diverse experience, and what I'm trying to do is to make them relevant to what we do in the charity sector. And of course, I'll ask the questions in different way until I'm satisfied that the answers are relevant to the sector. Now, you're all invited here because of your leadership in addressing complex societal challenges, right? And our goal is to explore how non-profit can create meaningful impact for beneficiaries, especially through collaboration with other charities, and of course, the public and the private sector, right? And because collective success is about going upstream. So my first question, and I would like to address it to Stephen. All of you, I will be addressing the question, but I would like to start with Stephen, right? Stephen, can you please briefly describe the key issues that IFS Foundation addresses, and what makes this issue complex, right? Can you tell us specifically about what the complexities are?
Yes, of course. So the IFS Foundation primarily focuses on trying to give kids in rural Sri Lankan communities access to a decent education. We believe fundamentally that education is the greatest weapon that we have to change the world, right? If you can improve learning outcomes, then fundamentally you get better health and well-being outcomes for that child, for their family, and indeed for the wider community if you do things at scale. The complexity is that you can't just build schools, right? You can't just fly some teachers in. That's simply not sustainable. So the symptoms that you first see might be low participation or low attendance. The underlying and far more complex problems are some of the socioeconomic issues, which is why we focus a lot of our time and attention on things like sanitation, sanitation for homes that have none. We're talking about very fundamental levels of poverty. We're talking about access to fresh water to prevent communicable disease, to save time. upgrading healthcare infrastructure, creating employment opportunities, especially for women in the communities. They make better savers, they spend money on the right things. It's just we've got a lot of data that shows that, and that creates together it creates a stable family environment. Then we can focus on investing in school infrastructure so that we can increase participation, improve attendance, improve exam results, and hopefully extend learning all the way through to year 12.
Right.
We think of that as a more sustainable method of driving change.
Right. Okay. Well, give us an idea of how long have you been doing this, and how, just describe the community, the size of the community. Are they dispersed, or are they all, within a same location?
That's a great question. So of the communities we work with, if I just give a couple of examples, typically those communities would be around 2,500 people, so maybe 800 to 900 homes. They'd be dispersed across a 10, 12 kilometre radius. They're often in a very heavy rural setting, so access is quite difficult. And that brings its own complexities as well in terms of being able to reach out and engaging with different community members so that you can participate and hopefully precipitate the change that we hope to realise within those communities.
Right, okay. Right, Michelle, same question, Describe the key issues that the Helping Hand is addressing and name the complexities.
Well, for the Helping Hand, so essentially it's a halfway house. I think it's complex because if you were to look at the halfway houses, a lot of them is drug addiction. I think in Singapore they're still criminalized, but I think in other countries there's treatment for addiction. And then when they are released, right, they go back into a system which maybe led them to the addiction as well. It's not set up for success. And if you were to go back into the same system, you might go back, you may not be able to face the family pressures, the friend pressure, the societal pressures, and then it then leads back to going back into addiction, even though they managed to kick it. So that, I guess, will be the complexity of how society views them, and how they view themselves, and whether they had the skill sets to make that change.
Right.
So that would be.
Okay. Well, again, give us an idea of how many of the beneficiaries are you attending to, and what is the dropout rate?
So it's about 60 to 100 people. They stay with Helping Hand for about 6 months. And there is, I think, data within Singapore for the, I always struggle with this word, recidivism rate, right? Which is about 20%, right? Okay. Over a 5-year period. So it's to be honest, is how to break that cycle.
Right, okay. Right, Gasper?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Actually, I don't usually have the opportunity to talk about what we do in Samaritans in Singapore. But today, thanks to this platform, Samaritans Singapore, as you know, is the only suicide prevention agency in Singapore, right? And what we are dealing with is the most human and life complex challenges, right? And that's suicide and distress among people at risk, right? And suicide is complex because to me it's in the intersection between health, social, and even communities, right? It's not there's no clear cut whether it's a health issue or a social issue or even community issues, and everybody present different kind of story, right? When they experience that suicide thoughts or in a distress situation, right? It can be a loss of someone they love. It can be traumatized by certain incidents. It can be mental illness, or it can be even a long-term unheard or uncared for, right? And we often say that suicide is not about wanting to die, but it's about wanting to end that pain. And that pain is always comes in different form, right? It can be emotional, it can be psychological, and it can even be social, right? And that's why it's so complex that we cannot just address it from one perspective. Yeah.
Right. Now, Stephen, you mentioned the word root cause versus symptoms. And it's a very typical trait in a problem that is complex. Yeah, because you don't see serial relationships, you know, you don't have something predictable. Yeah, and sometimes it's not easy to differentiate between symptoms as well as the core problem, the root cause itself. So, you know, how do you gain that clarity in order to create a work plan that is clear at the execution level, or even moving funds towards what's long-term and what's short-term? Right?
When we started out the IFS Foundation, that was in 2019, we spent a good deal of time going through what I'd call kind of quantitative analysis, really looking at what the research was telling us, data points, looking at statistics, looking at what other organisations have attempted to do and the relative, you know, successes and failures of those programs. But what really helped us to shape our theory of change was engaging with the community. And engaging with the community at different levels of that community. So when we go into communities in these rural communities in Sri Lanka, there are traditional forms of leadership that exist within these communities, doctors, teachers, economic development officers, so kind of government agencies. But we found it far more interesting and far more useful for us to talk with the kind of the accidental leaders. I think you referred to it in your introductory remarks, the kind of the leaders without power. Right. We refer to them as the connectors, and I'll give you one example, right? So there's a village, Madampi. It's on the way to, if you know Sri Lanka, you go up towards Nuri Elia, the tea plantation area. We're just on the left there. And we're spending a couple of days in the community trying to talk with as many people as we can, understand what's going on, trying to figure out what the strengths are of that community, trying to figure out how we might be able to precipitate change as a useful outsider. And we noticed there was a couple that kept turning up at the local medical centre. It was an elderly couple, and all they did was they swept the yard and they tended to the garden. But we also observed they knew everyone. They talked to the nurse that was working at the front desk. They talked to the patients. They talked to the school kids as they went by. They knew everyone. So we talked with them. And their view, their understanding of what was going on was far less about what's wrong in this community. It was far more strengths-based. Right. So it was more, these are our assets. We're very proud of this. They were doing the cleaning because they were very proud of this asset. Yes, sure, there were things that they would like to develop and do with that. But it came from a much more, let's call it an optimistic, a more positive impression of the community. Giving them a voice in the decision-making process was super important, shaped their thinking. And those connectors are amplifiers. By engaging with them, they're going to tell all those people that they talk to every day about the work that we're doing, and suddenly we've got a community that is supportive and working in partnership with us, rather than a more traditional kind of philanthropic approach of providing solutions, right? Precipitating change, not providing solutions.
Right. So it's very important that you are kind of, you found out that the sweepers have the highest level of contact, with the ground, and not the board and the senior leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And this reminded me of a study with Disneyland when their customer service plunged at one point in time, and they hired the top consultants in to do a survey for them, and the consultants say, let's train our boards and our senior leaders and our functional heads, and still customer satisfaction didn't go up. So they hired another set of consultants, a boutique small one, and their findings were that you should be focusing on training your sweepers, because they are the ones who entertain the customers when the customers get lost. And in Disneyland, there are millions of customers, and they always go to the sweepers and say, where should we head next? And if you increase the level of customer service, your corporate customer service level will go up. And true enough, they stopped training the board and the senior leaders. They trained the sweepers. Yeah, and in a year's time, their customer service went up Right, so that was that was a very good analogy. Now I wanted to ask the same question, Michelle or Gasper. In the boardroom, do you all talk about root cause versus symptoms, or do you all just talk about programs and impact and everything that the Act of Charity say and the Code of Governance say and your sector administrators say? How deep do your conversations go with regards to really understand the issues? And be honest about it, because I have talked to many boards and they say, no, we seldom discuss this in the boardroom. So I just want to bring this as an awareness and also as an aspiration for boards and leaders, right? And of course, there are many charities who do it, and they should be the role models as a result of this panel session. So share with us what happens in your boardroom.
Yeah, so I have certain, everyone has a certain belief system, right? So my opinion, and just looking at the, it may not agree necessarily with the panel before, right? I believe that at the end of the day, the board, there's a role for the board. Mm-hmm. The board is to be strategic, and the board is to be governance, right? So these are two key criteria of the board. And if you want to look, in order for the board to be strategic, they have to understand what's going on in order for it to be strategic. If at the end of the day, the only thing that the board is saying is do this, do this, do this, without answering the issues, then you're sort of talking to the air, mm-hmm. or you're talking to yourself. So I think it is very important mm-hmm. to know what is the system mm-hmm. that we work in order to prescribe the best solutions. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if I had to say, if I look at my skill set, I think people like me, they like to pigeonhole me in certain aspects of the board. But what I do in my daily life is to be able to take strategy and translate it to execution. So that's mm-hmm. my skill set. And whether I'm being utilized in the boardroom in that manner, obviously, is two different things, but I believe that that's my skill set. Mm-hmm. And for what you are describing, mm-hmm. that is something which resonates with me right. A lot. Mm-hmm. When I look at the charities which I've been involved in, so I've been involved in a few. I've been on the World Vision board in Singapore, advisory board for 9 years. And now I'm on the Helping Hand for 3 years. And when I look at the root problem, I say that the root problem is version of self, identity of self. So when we looked at World Vision Singapore, the women are trafficked, they are rescued, but why do they go back? The children who are sold into abuse, they are returned to their families, but who sold them in the first place? For people who are drug addicts, why did they need that need to escape, right? So all of this goes back to themselves, mm-hmm. their self-worth, society's look on them, and it is without finding a way for them to have a good version of themselves, they are likely to repeat back the patterns. So I believe that the charities that I've been involved in mm-hmm. have tried to look at the base issue, which is the version of themselves. Mm-hmm. The second thing, which is the helping hand, and actually also World Vision's model, is to provide a community that tries to lift them up. Mm-hmm. Because people, self-worth is a really difficult thing to address. And it is also about how society looks at you. And so that support network after that is really important. Mm-hmm. So when I look at World Vision as an international organization, when we as a board commit to a project, we commit to a project for 15 years. so that's the financial risk that as a board member we're signing off to, right? So we have our financing model allows us to build capability and not the child, but the surrounding community for 15 years, because that's how long it takes to build community. At a helping hand, even when people, if you look at the stats for what we do at a helping hand, after they leave the helping hand, we have something informal called helpers. And actually, the reason is because even after they leave the helping hand, there's a support network afterwards, and we try to create that community to help them stay on the straight and narrow. So I believe that when capacity building for version identity of self, and then to build that community around them is necessary for the work we do.
Right. Yeah. Okay, certainly very strategic and long-term views, yeah, which address root cause, right? Because that would take a much longer time. How about Gasper?
Yeah, actually, when I listened to Michelle, I was thinking, wow, if my organization have that luxury, right, to be able to plan 15 years ahead and sign off with a blank check, well, that would be very easy for us to do. and yeah, if you have that resources, please join us. But joke aside, since before I go into the detail, but I thought maybe just define what is symptom and root cause in our space, right? Symptoms are, things like when someone with suicidal thoughts or making a crisis call to our helpline, and what leads them to do that are the root cause, right? So they may be things that cause them to be lonely, feeling lonely, or relationship issues, or even financial stress, things like that. So those are the root cause. And when I joined SOS many years ago, we are always addressing the symptom, right? And I remember on the second year, I still have the slides when I presented to the board. I feel that there's no way we can do a perfect job, right? Because there are so many things to address, right? I mentioned earlier that the complexity of it, right? It's just beyond social, right? Beyond health and also community. And that's where, I have all this chart that I remember I presented to the board and said that, while we do these symptoms, we also need to address the root cause. And of course, addressing root cause will need a higher calling. That means we need to work with government agencies, we need to work with community partners, and these are all not funded, right? And these are, questions where the board will challenge you, right? So where do you get the money and things like that? So these are the tough decisions that we have to make at the board level. So fast forward today, we are very fortunate now, while we respond immediately to keep everyone or to keep the individual safe, which is through our crisis intervention, and that's to address the symptom. We are also partnering with, social service agency, community partners, government, in terms of looking at how to look at long-term prevention, right, which is addressing the root cause.
Right, okay. Now, this brings to mind something which I believe could be very beneficial for boards. Because, Stephen, you mentioned about the theory of change, right? And how you get all the different communities and partners involved in not just addressing the short-term needs that probably addresses symptoms, but also the medium and the long-term needs for the beneficiaries. And Michelle, you exactly, in outlining your thinking process, you're addressing the same thing. And Gasper, this is why we have this panel session, right? So we educate the board members to think of not just operational, but also strategic matters. And I hope SOS will come to a day when they can look at a 15 years view. So of course, my question would be, it's actually for all of you. Huh? Do you think your board members understand the concept of theory of change? How many do you think? Just a hand. Oh, no hands. Wow. We have something to do, right? So my next question then would be, do you believe that it would be helpful if the board members are trained on what the theory of change truly is? How many of you? Right. Okay. Not many hands. Not many hands. Yeah. So we will have to ponder over that. Yeah. I wanted to bring in a question that it's relevant to what we're talking about. And the question is, many charities may not have a large donor base. Could you please advise how funding can be applied to support operational needs rather than just programs, since many grants do not cover the program level? Panel? Anyone?
Sure. Okay. We all struggle with it, right?
Yes.
It is a common problem. But I think there are increasingly innovative funding mechanisms out there. It may require some research and some confidence on the part of your organisation to go explore those. So I was recently in the UK, actually on a study trip with the Majority Trust. I volunteer with them here in Singapore, and we met with some funding organisations over in the UK. Some really innovative models where they're saying, okay, we're going to provide a grant, but we'll provide a grant on the basis of you diversifying your revenue streams. So if a charity is able to demonstrate it's diversifying its revenue streams, the granting partner is going to dollar match the diversified revenue that's being created, which creates both a funding stream, but it also creates a diversification and sustainability outcome. So, you know, and where that dollar matching was unrestricted. So it was encouraging a sustainability outcome. It was rewarding, you know, effort in that regard, and it was creating greater levels of freedom for that charity to then spend that money, you know, in the way that it saw fit.
Okay.
Because it takes people, it takes personnel, it takes resources to get things done. So
Right.
I thought that was quite interesting to see the evolution of those types of models in the UK, and it got us thinking, how can we bring some of those models into the Singapore context?
Yeah. And you're referring to the fundraising strategy, right? Not just to rely on one source, but many sources as well. And for Michelle and Gasper, I wanted you to think of fundraising also as a symptom and a problem, right? You're not getting enough funds. What is the root problem, you think? If charities, you know, and I know I'm empathetic to the smaller charities, you know, who are struggling with sustainable funding. But what do you think are the root cause that they are not, you know, getting that funds flowing to them? Yeah, in your own experience, yeah.
Well, Theresa, you hit the nail on the head, because the very first thing I was going to say is that small charities do not have the same resources as bigger charities, and I do think that one of the issues in Singapore is the size of charity. It's the size. So size matters. And then it leads to capability, right? Because if you're a small charity, governance costs money, risk costs money, fundraising costs money. And so when you have a small charity, you have one CEO without the levels of expertise to do all things well. He's expected to be strategic, he's supposed to do risk, he's supposed to raise funds, so all of this naturally causes a problem, because how do you find someone who has the skill set to do each of these things well? The second thing is that when there are so many of these smaller, I look at it, we're 50 to 100 people at the Helping Hand. I'm not about to say I wish that we had more residents, because it's a good problem in society if we don't have that many residents, right? But there's a constant cycle, right? Every 6 months they go, we do work therapy, but we can't do a social enterprise, because after 6 months, there's a whole new group of people that comes in. So essentially, I do believe that size matters when you want to do something when you want to build this sort of expertise. Coming back to World Vision Singapore is because our funding model is $30 per month, gyro, and my kids, if someone graduates, it automatically brings me to another kid before I even know when to say no, and then I feel bad that, I've been providing, the automatic deduction at $35 a month, and as a donor, I've committed in my mental mind to bring them up to graduation, right? So as a donor, before I signed on, the funding model commits me to this 15 years in a way. So that's a nice funding model that someone cried. By the way, I'll tell you the secret about World Vision Singapore, World Vision. When you fund a child, you're not funding a child. You're funding the whole community. So it's just a funding model, and it is a marketing model, can I say? So if I were to look at it, I would say that we also need to have innovative funding models when we raise funds, because then that becomes a very nice model. And then the third thing I wanted to say, so the first one is size, right, in order to build scale. The second one is looking at the funding models. The third thing is, I think that when we look at fundraising, in certain countries, it is a professional skill set. Like when I look in the States, it is a professional. Your whole life, that is what you do. And so there is capability and professionalism. That's their job, right? And that somehow is not as mature, I would say, in Singapore, because that's not a job that people aspire to. So I think there are three different areas which we could be looking at.
Right, okay. Any views from you, Gasper?
Yeah, I think size does matter, but I think also what is important is that the credibility of the organization, right? I think, and I think that's what donors or partners always look for, right? The three things I always, when I engage them, they always look for. Number one is that, is this organization able to provide a grounded insights, right? They expect us to provide the human lens to surface what is happening on the ground, right? That data can show, right? I think that's very important, that we are able to humanize, that storyline to them, right? Number two is trust with the community, right? That's why I said branding is so important. Although, in social service, we don't talk about branding, but to me, I think it does matter, because many organizations or many donors want to only associate, right, and have a direct access, the relationship with organizations that are reputable, right? Nobody want to associate with mediocre kind of, or small agency, right? And that's a sad thing, right? But it's a truth, right, for a donor, right, to want to be associated. And the third thing is, of course, agility, right? Is this organization able to fill the gap where the structure cannot cover, right? Because these are the donors who always want to say, oh, yeah, where's the gap, right? They always ask you, where's the gap in the sector? And, are you able to, have the agility to be able to fill the gap? And of course, with all these things come in, right, then you have expectation also from them, right? They want to expect you to, have a good governance, right? That's why you must achieve all these governance transparency award and all these things to show that, your organization is well run, right? The second thing is, of course, you must provide evidence-based impact report, right? Yeah. And of course, the third thing is even, higher calling. They want to check whether your team, right? Do you have professionals in your team, right? So those are the things that comes with all these demands, and it's not easy, right? And we are still work in progress. I must say, we are still work in progress in SOS. We try to shift the mindset from, giving money, donating money to help SOS, moving that mindset to, help us to collectively build a resilient community, right? Rather than just helping SOS, which is, people mindset always have that. Yeah.
Right.
I think that narrative is very important. Yeah.
Okay. And And all your answers, right, points to the need to have a board that is innovative. I mean, always looking at alternative ways of funding the organization. You use the word agile as well, right? So I'm going to blend in this question with what you have said. In some organizations, faithfulness is a highly valued faithfulness, and having long-serving board members is seen as a positive rather than a negative. How would you talk to such organizations about board renewal, considering what you have said about what the charity needs in terms of leadership, right? Agility, innovation, alternative ways of funding. How do you persuade a charity that perhaps faithfulness may work against them? It may work, but it may also work against them. Anyone?
Oh, I strongly believe that there should be term limits. On our listed vehicles, we have term limits. We have a nomination committee. So I don't understand why we would not just institute this. I mean, any company that's listed, I don't think you have much of a choice, right? So why wouldn't you do this for a charity? I think it should just, it should be set out as a requirement, but we should have proper nominations committee. And so, there's one is term limits, but actually most boards I know is like on the Helping Hands 2 + 2 + 2, right? With World Vision is 3 + 3 + 3. I actually think that we should even have, it should not be automatic. Like at the 2-year mark, at the 3-year mark, if someone is not showing up, if someone is, well, I don't understand why they want to be associated with a charity if they're not showing up. But genuinely, there should be a nom-com that looks at attendance as a minimum. So I don't understand why it's a conversation. I think it should just be a governance issue.
Okay, right. Any other gentler views?
I wholeheartedly concur with the idea of term limits. That's a straightforward. I think that's just an essential component of good governance, as you say. You spoke about kind of a little bit like managing expectations as well, right? Having regular review cycles, and it strikes me that one of the things we talk about a lot is that our strategies can be written in pencil, but our values are written in ink. And one of our values is about very clear communication and expectation setting with each other, which enables us to have those conversations. If someone is not meeting those standards, those expectations that we've agreed right up front, you're then able to hold the space to have that conversation with them if something is going off beat. So for us, really holding true, having those values in ink, talking about them regularly and using them in our day-to-day conduct as a board is super important and enables us to hold those conversations, even though they're still difficult,
right?
But it enables us to hold the space to have those conversations.
Exactly, right. And the reason why I ask for a gentler view is we are always very empathetic to the smaller charities because, not for lack of effort, they do have a challenge attracting board members who fit those bills: agile, innovative, and access to multiple sources of funding. Even I want them, right? So the one with the more credible, louder voice will get them, yeah? So yes, I do agree term limits are important because it kind of send a message that succession, new ideas, new boards coming in will give you a very different view of how the charity can be run. So that succession is important, and term limits, it's like the guide for you. And 10 years is already pretty generous. Yeah, and we always advocate that for the smaller charities, once they retire, the board members, even for the big ones, you can still retain them as advisors or in other capacities, right? Or very esteemed donor or whatever, right? So there are many ways around it, yeah? Sure,
Yeah.
yes.
I just want to add on that. I think for the board, beside terms, we also need to look at our strategic plan, right? So let me give you an example, right? When the organization go through, typically you have a 5-year strategic plan and things like that, right? And when strategy plan is established, you do a internal organization reorg, right? You look at the competency level of your staff, your team, right? You reorg your team a bit and things like that. Many a times we neglect to also refresh, right? The terms of reference, the scope of work, whether even your board, your committee are still relevant, right? Based on the new plans, right? And it's about that time also that we have the opportunity to also, renew our board, right? I'm a strong advocate for that, and if you ask SOS volunteers, I always challenge. In my second year, I asked two board members to step down. They are very nice people, right? But I think if they are sitting on the seat and are not able to contribute to the long-term success, then I think we should thank them, right? I think it's a hard conversation that as a CEO, we have the right to be able to speak up on that. And I intentionally also sit in the governance and nominating committee because I want to make sure that we have the right people on board. Right? I think that's very important that sometimes, although I know Theresa will tell me that it's beyond the CEO roles, but I think we need to poke our nose there to make sure that we have the right people, right, that can help us to carry forward our strategic plan. Not just the operation team that is restructuring, right, but also the board also have to be renewed. They also have that capability to bring us forward. I think that's very important, not just on the 2-year terms, 6-year terms kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah. And no, Gasper, I won't ask you to do otherwise because CEO is really a very important feature in board succession.
Yeah, but I want to bring up something, right? And no disrespect, Gasper, but it is not the CEO's role to be replacing the board members. In this particular situation, I would actually be asking, what is the chair of the board and what is the chair of the nominations committee doing? Because, okay, so in reality, I mean, it may sound like I may be speaking, but from what I understand of corporate governance, the board is able to sack the CEO, right? So there is a dynamic situation if the CEO is finding and nominating the board members. In reality, if the chair of the board or the governance committee is not somehow looking after board succession, I actually believe that there is a governance issue at play. And I'm sorry if I'm saying something which seems very controversial, but from where I'm sitting from a listed vehicle, those are the expectations. I understand, for example, when you say small charities, so the level of governance may be different, but I think that this is related to where is the donor base coming from? Because as a board, we have, I believe we have a governance duty to the people that we are taking money from to make sure that the governance is being run properly, right? That there are certain governance structures which should be there.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying that I think the CEO somehow gets roped into it when the board is not functioning, but from a corporate governance perspective, there's a mindset, I think, that may also have to shift.
Yeah. Well, Gasper, I think you do need to defend yourself on this one and provide more clarity.
No, I totally agree. I know we know where to draw the line, but I think as an organization transform, right? I think the partnership between chair, the board, and the CEO, I think is important, right? And of course, this is not I do it on my own, right? It has to be alignment with the board. But sometimes hard conversation, tough conversation, somebody have to still do it, right? And because in our previous board, when we are society, our board members are also our service volunteer, right? So they are, just to add on the complexity a bit, they may not have the right skill set and things like that because they are always on the phone room, right? And society, they just push people into the board and sit on the board. So we just need to be more mindful on the area. And of course, I do agree, and that's why just now I clarify that it's not our role, but I think sometimes CEO can also work with the chairman to really, especially during transformation process of the organization. I think it's very important to get input from the CEO also, because that's how, we drive the change.
Right, okay, so we're getting to the topic on leadership, because after all, our headline is Leadership for Collective Success. And earlier on, we all agree that we have to be working with partners, right? Nobody goes on it alone. Yeah, and now culture becomes a very big part of that leadership responsibility. When I say leadership, it applies to boards. Of course, it applies to the executive and management as well. So the question is, culture often eats strategy for breakfast. How do you intentionally shape culture in your organization, especially during times of change or stress? And I like to refer you to the values that you have to upkeep and the culture when working with partners, both internal and external. How do you intentionally shape that partnership culture?
I can go first.
Okay.
I think in my humble experience working in social service, definitely in a commercial way is slightly different, right? But I think my journey has taught me as a leader in social service sector. First of all, you need to have the empathy, right? Empathy of the situation that we are facing. We do need to have humility. We must be open to hear feedback and also learn from others. And more importantly, we must have that system perspective, right? We need to understand also in the social service sector, no one person can solve the problem alone. Right? Yes, always in the earlier segment, I think we talk about collaboration, right? And leaders, to me, must first of all, be able to see the picture, right? The system perspective. We must also value diverse expertise, and more importantly, I think we must listen as much as we direct. I think that's very important. And to talk about cultivating mindset of others, right? I just want to build on the way we do it in Samaritans, Singapore, right? Whether or not you are board members, you are committee members, you are staff, you have potential volunteers, we make you go through our Be a Samaritan program. The basic introduction 101 to suicide prevention, right? And that actually help us to, align our thoughts, our thinking, the way we so that everyone have a feel of how is it look like to serve our client. And then at the staff level, when they join, they have to mandatorily go through a para-counseling session on how, para-counseling training, right, on how to support people with suicide. And that will give them the perspective of how to engage and support, our clients, right? So that they have an understanding of, when they do work on, and, what kind of work how do we want to approach to address the client issue. And those staff, so we have a lot of training. We have a lot of, opportunity for staff to volunteer. Those that are very good in terms of their skill, we encourage them to join our emergency response program, right? Where this one will allow them to be on the ground, and on live to support family who lost their individual to suicide or their loved one to suicide, and that actually also shaped the way how they can help us, whether they are in finance function or compliance function or communication function, to be able to help us to see how to support our client in a holistic manner. And I want to also say that over time, I do observe that staff with strong analytical or result-driven skill, like for example, I think my head of corporate finance is here, you start to see them appreciate the human side of the impact, right? And And that shift actually strengthened collectively our team to improve our service model and the kind of collective outcome that we want to achieve. So sometimes during conversation in the meeting and things like that, you can see that perspective has changed, right? They provide a more balanced view. Yeah. So that's our approach in SOS.
Okay. Yeah, Stephen and Michelle, I'm just going to ask you to hold on to your answers because I realize we have 5 minutes to go. So between us and lunch, yeah? Right, so I'm going to ask my final question actually, which is really about leadership, success with partnerships. Right, and a survey that I've seen recently is one of the most important leadership traits for partnerships to work is readiness for change. Right? If we are all more ready for change, we can all be more cohesive together. But not everyone. We've encountered individuals who are resistant to change. Yeah, they are rigid, they are skeptical, they are cynical about new ideas, or even working together. Would you include such a person in a collaborative initiative? Why or why not?
I'm going to say why I would. Are you a why not or are you a why? Because then we could have the case for that. Absolutely yes. Yes, okay. Yes. In fact, I think I'm one of them. You need black hats in this world. You need people that are going to challenge your thinking, right? Otherwise, you end up with rigid ideas or the same outdated solutions to new problems. So that's just not helpful. Of course, if that person remains a black hat for the entire duration of a project, that can be problematic. Mm-hmm. But there is absolutely a time and a space during the planning and execution review phase of any program, of any intervention, for people who are cynical to ask those hard questions. That fuels resilience. It's an essential part of the decision-making process. Okay. So yes.
So that's a yes, yeah?
Okay, I can do the no. I think there are two portions. There are two portions of this question, so it's a bit complicated. I think that the organization, that means the charity and the board, need to come up with their strategy. And when they are coming up with the strategy, in order to drive change and improvement, there's always change management, okay? And the frustration, can I say, will be that sometimes the board wants things to move faster than what is the execution team is able to execute. Mm-hmm. So I think that tension exists, okay? But when the charity is going out to find partners, they have to find partners who are aligned to the mission and aligned to the capability of the charity. So I'll give an example. At a Helping Hand, we want to do social enterprises. Okay, we really do. Because we want to give the residents the confidence that what they are doing has some commercial value. We're going to give them skill sets in order that when they go out, they will be able to find a job, they have that self-confidence, etc. Okay? Reality is that as a business lady, that social enterprise will never pass my bar. Okay? Because I've explained the 6 months, they're rotating in and out. They don't have the skill sets. And then we have to change. You can't take an order and be consistent in delivery. Then there is the fact that our people drop out of the program and all of these things. So when we find a partner, we can't find a partner on commercial terms alone. We have to find a partner who has to view it as a charity. Mm-hmm. So in reality, it is work therapy. It can never be a social enterprise like a business. It's not possible. And so the lens by which the partner has, they cannot expect them to be always punctual. I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. The people change. If they want to view this in that lens and that professional capability, we will have to say it's the wrong partner.
Okay. So we have a yes and no. And Gasper, are you maybe?
Yeah, I guess probably that's why you choose us, right? So my answer will be depends. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
As well.
I think it's important that we look at the skepticism, in the right context, right? Whether it sometimes it does help to bring up the blind spots, right? And also probably highlight or anticipate some risks that we may have missed out, right? But if let's say the issues become obstructive, right? Undermining trust of the whole team, then I think we need to put a stop to that, but I think the spirit should be looking at the contribution, right, and not the confrontation. So we try to find a balanced view to see whether, is the view, beneficial or valuable to the context or not. I did mention that we need to, I mean, this is what I learned a lot also in social service sector. We need to listen as much as we direct. So sometimes if you a little bit more patient, you listen more, after 5 questions, the 7th question may spark some ideas and say, maybe I should think of that, yeah. But like I said again, if it undermines trust and stall any progress, then I think it's a no. Yeah.
All right, so with that, it's a wrap.